All right, well, welcome to my stream. Today I am resuming work on our enemy spawner for our vampire card combat game. We currently have just a basic spawner system where we manually put in, it's not a spawner, it's just an encounter zone, and then we manually put in our enemies. All right, I made some changes to the code and now it's not looking correct, but that's all right. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a full spawning system, and I'll just delete this out here. And I am going to first create an empty, and I'm going to call this spawner. And I'm going to create another empty, and I'm going to call this combat zone. And so what I want is, I'm going to move this over a bit. I want on game load for this spawner to spawn our enemies. All right. Okay. Control Z, Control Z, Z, Z. And I need to create empty encounter. And I want the combat zone and the spawner to be part of encounter. And then let's move encounter over here so it's in our screen. And I'm just going to reset these transforms just to make sure that they're, it looks like they were already just fine, but I'll reset them anyways. So I want there to be a combat zone with a box collider so that when the player enters that box collider, it triggers combat. And that's what we have up here on the encounters that we hand built. And then the spawner, it's going to automatically spawn enemies at level load. So when the level loads up, start's called, and the spawner is going to spawn enemies. Now, previously, in my last work on this, we set up some scripts for doing this. And so if I come down here to my scripts, there is an encounter trigger script, and so that is going to go onto my combat zone. And there is a spawner, and the spawner is under enemies, and then there's an enemy spawner. And so I'm going to pop that in here. And so now we have a spawner, we have a combat zone, and we have the full encounter. And where is my Visual Studio at? All right, so I see one mistake I made, and I did not save this, which is why my content is not showing up correctly over here. So we'll wait a minute for it to recompile. All right, there we go. So combat, no. Combat zone, and then enemy spawner. Okay, good. Now I want to just start over on this, delete you out, and then let's create a new empty combat zone. And let's go back to our scripts and the encounter trigger. We're going to pop that on. Okay, so this is the state I was at last night when I was working on this. And so the encounter trigger, previously when I manually created the encounter, I just manually set up a box collider. But that's not what I want. I don't want to have to manually create it. I want it created with code. And so I'm going to come down here. And I had previously tested this out, so I'm just going to redo it. Actually, yeah, do that. So I want to add a box collider to the encounter trigger. It should inherit the position of the parent, and then the scale should be set to 4, 2.25, and 4. And then is trigger should be checked, and it should also have a gizmo showing the current size. And so it's already done. And that's because I had previously done it. So I want to, how can I make it redo the code? Dun, 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 dun. Restore to last checkpoint. Let's just control. Nope, it's not going to do that. Figures. So, don't undo edits that ChatGPT made for you and then try to reapply them while you're in video, because it doesn't like it. So let's just let's try this. Let's just retry and see if it's gonna continue to complain about, oh, I already did that for you. Okay, so I deleted the work you previously did. Please reapply it. It should admonish me right now and complain about, why did you do that? You're making my life harder. I know, AI does not have feelings. At least not yet. Hopefully it won't in the future either. Don't make it too humanistic. Don't make it too much like a human. So let's see if it's going to detect that I deleted out what it had previously done and reapply it. There we go. And yes, this code is exactly what it had done before. Unvalidate, reset, perfect. All right, let's keep that. So now, let me just save this. Come back over here to Unity, let it recompile. And there's my box collider. Excellent. So I've got my encounter trigger. I've got my box collider. It did not pick up the values that I had specified for the box collider though. So I am going to swap back to Visual Studio. And well, it's saying that it should. So let's take a look at what's going on there. And I am going to delete this entirely. Oops. Yep. It helps if I am clicking on the right screen. There we go. Delete. And let's just recreate it. Create empty. Combat zone. Let's find our code for the encounter trigger. Reapply that. There we go. We got box collider. It's got the right size. Excellent. We've got our spawner in here. We can see the spawner gizmo. And we're currently spawning 3 enemies. I'm going to change this to 1. And I am going to delete our previous encounter got moved way out of the way. But I'm going to delete it. They all did. So I'll just, before I delete it, I'm going to just pull it over here so that we can see. Okay, so here is the previous encounter I had that was manually created. And I'm going to move it back here just so that we can still see it in the scene. And then here up front is our new encounter. Our new encounter is going to dynamically spawn the total enemies that we specify. So 1, and we only have UI for 3. So we're going to spawn 1 right now. And then we'll test it with 2 and 3. And those enemies are going to spawn along the ground. Life's going to be good. We've got our combat trigger box. So if we enter this box, we're going to enter combat. And let's just see what happens if I hit play right here. And there is no enemy spawned. So it didn't work. But I know why it didn't work. And that is because within our spawner, I did not actually identify an enemy to spawn. So let's, to keep it different, let's spawn 1 skeleton with heavy armor. So now that I have an enemy selected to spawn, I hit play. And now we have an enemy spawned. And if I walk up here, enters combat. Now, it's not working correctly because the code for the combat zone is expecting that the enemies are nested underneath. And that's not the case here. The enemies aren't nested under the combat zone. The enemies are nested under the spawner. And so I'm going to have to fix that. But it accomplished what I wanted. Combat zone triggered. So I'm going to stop now. And now I am going to just save this. And then we're going to swap back to Visual Studio Code. And it is the encounter trigger. So, where in the encounter trigger? Start, machine brain reset, on validate, on trigger enter. Okay, and then it's grabbing the children. Okay, so please, let's see, you don't have to be polite to AI. I always want to be polite. Is that wrong? Let's change the code in the on trigger enter with the new dynamic enemy spawner. The enemy objects are no longer children of the encounter trigger object. Instead, both the spawner and combat zone are children of the same parent. Combat zone is where the encounter trigger.cs script is attached. Enemies will be spawned as children of the spawner object. Please update on trigger enter to find the children of the spawner object that is also a child. Ooh, this again. Okay, I'm getting too complex. I suspect GPT-5 can handle it, but I'm not gonna test it right now. That was horrible. Let's just give this a try and see what we get. I'm sure I've given it enough information, so we'll play with it. Dun 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 dun. Updating logic. Doesn't look like it. Bets on how long it takes. It's thinking harder on this one. There we go. All right, let's see what it's doing. With the dynamic, so it took into account what I told it. It now finds the spawner as a sibling, same parent as combat zone. Good. Prefers a child named spawner. Good. Falls back to any child with an enemy spawner component. So I didn't tell it that it was enemy spawner. Is it enemy spawner? Did he get it right? It is, isn't it? Yep, enemy spawner. So good. It was aware of that. Last resort, searches descendants under the same parent for enemy spawner. Oh, nice. I like this. Counts enemies by iterating children under the found spotter and matches tag enemy. I think we tagged them enemy. Let's take a quick peek. Enemy spawner. Reset, on validate, start, refresh options from resources, if spawn parent, enemy instance, create, snap to ground. You know, I'm not sure. So that's going to be interesting to find out. If not, I will have it fix that. And that one will be pretty easy to fix. So let's take a look here. Okay, count only enemies that are children descendants of this game object. That comment has to change. With the dynamic spawner, enemies are children of the sibling spawner. Delete these two lines of code. Var spawner equals resolve spawner transform. If spawner is null, is not null, then enemy transforms equals spawner dot get components in children for each iterate through. Okay, detected plus plus. All right, log, and it could not be found. Okay, and then we come down here, and I like that it started adding in comments for me because I've been adding them in myself. And this way it's just doing it automatically for me. So I like that. Attempt to find sibling spawner transform. Parent first try. Good. Then the fallback and then last resort. Excellent. I love having these multiple options in place. So your code ends up being a lot less buggy this way. It's more forgiving. So I'm going to accept those changes. Oh, there was another change down here. On draw gizmo. Okay. File, save. And let's swap back to Unity. Let it recompile. Bum ba bum ba ba bum ba ba bum ba bum ba bum ba bum. Okay. Now let's see what happens if we hit play. We still got our enemy sitting there. And we're going to cruise on down here into the spawner zone. And it's not detecting. I was really hoping that it would count those and we'd be good. So let's take a look at what we have going on here. First of all, is this enemy... Okay, so this enemy is not tagged as enemy. So that's going to be a problem right there. So let's stop this and let us switch back to Visual Studio. I figured that was probably going to be the issue, but I wasn't 100% positive. Come back here to the enemy spawner, and then using the enemy spawner, I need the spawned enemies to have the enemy tag. That is what we're looking for, right? The enemy tag. Or is it looking for, so yep, tag enemy. I was wondering if it was looking for the layer. And that's something that I should have checked. Let's pop back over here real quick. And let's see if it is putting the enemy layer on. We confirmed it is not tagging it, and that's easy enough to fix. But let's just take a look at this, and the layer is default also. Okay, so that's why it's not able to find it. So back here to the code, and I need these spawned enemies to have the enemy tag applied. And it is probably going to put that here in the start, because that's where it needs to be, if it's going to do it right. And there we go. Right inside start. Try go.tag equals enemy. Debug. Okay. Warns if the enemy tag isn't defined in the tag manager. Tags, layers, tags, add enemy. Got it. Let's keep that code. File and save. Right, Control S. I need to remember Control S. Let the code recompile. Boom. What's the boom reference to? My wife was doing work in the evenings, and I was playing a video game. And in the video game, one of the characters I kept fighting would yell out, boom. It was hilarious. She kept getting mad at me for distracting her. Had the volume turned up too much. Anyways, let's hit play. All right, now we have combat. It detected the one enemy. We've got one enemy bar. Cards are drawn. Life is good. So I'm going to stop here. I am going to come to my spawner, and I'm going to change the spawn count to 2. And I'm going to come down here to my enemies. And I am going to enable a demon. And let's hit play. Oh, that is great and glorious. And now we have 2 enemies. So this is interesting. This is a bug in our system. We don't have any labels, and so you don't actually know who you are fighting. So we definitely have to put some labels in here so that you know, okay, I'm fighting demon or I'm fighting skeleton. Yeah, that's easy enough to do though. Now we also have another bug going on. Deal 2 damage 3 times, heal twice. You left click to select your card to view it, and then you can click down on something else, gain 5 armor. And then you right click to apply the card, and then you left click on one of these to trigger it. And this is because we don't have drag and drop of card plays going on right now. What I'd want to do is set it up so that when you select a card, you're hovering over which enemy you want to target and the enemy will highlight. But for this vertical slice, we don't have time to pull that off. So I'm just going to choose this one. And then I'm going to end my turn. But there's a bug. We were working on combat code the other day, and some bug got injected in so that when you end turn, everything just pauses. So the game is, I mean, it's not frozen because I can still access the pause menu and resume back out, but it doesn't return. And so that's something that I will be working on later. But for right now, I am just happy that the spawner is working. It was really easy to set up thanks to GPT-5. Yeah, this is great. Now, the important thing that people need to do, you really got to do this. You got to love prefabs. So in this case, I'm going to come down here to my prefabs folder. I'm going to grab this encounter. I'm going to drop it down to a prefab. So now I have the encounter prefab, which means I can just drop another encounter in, keep it under my spawner so it's easy to know where it's at. I'll move it back here a bit, bring it up so that it's right at the ground level. Actually, this one's sunk under the ground level too. So I'm going to bring that one up to the ground level. About like so. It doesn't really have to be up at ground level, but I want it high enough that the player's not going to be able to jump over or something. I want some depth to it. But then the code is grounding the spawned enemies to the ground. And so it doesn't matter where they're at, they're going to drop down to the ground. So now I just added a second spawner. Let's hit play, confirm that worked. And we know that our prefab is working correctly. Always test. You make a change, test it. Okay, so there I've got my first encounter, and then you can see back there in the background, there is the manually placed skeleton. I know it's manually placed because it has an idle animation on it, whereas my spawned characters do not have idle animations yet. But I can see just past that manually placed skeleton, there is now a duplicate of what I have spawned up here in front. So I know that it's working, which is great because now we can quickly populate the scene, this level, with enemy encounters all over the place. And then simply we drop in an encounter. Oh, there we go. And Unity wasn't happy at the moment. So you drop a new encounter in, you go to the spawner, you then just specify how many enemies do you want to spawn. By default now it'll have 2, but you can change it. And then you have to turn on who you want to spawn, which right now the default is doing an enemy, a demon, and it's doing a skeleton with heavy armor. So that is something that I want to adjust. I don't want those to be defaulted. So I'm going to come down here to my encounter and I'm going to edit it. And I'm going to come in here to the spawner. I am going to keep the total spawn count to 2, but I'm going to change it to skeleton as the default. And I'm going to turn off the skeleton heavy armor, and I'm going to turn off the demon. And that's what I want my defaults to be. Now I'll exit out of that. File save. Okay, that's good. All right, I'm happy. It worked. Yay. All right, thank you for your time. I'm going to be taking a short break, and then I'll be back to start debugging the combat code and figuring out what's going on there. So come back in a few minutes. Thank you.